They laughed at her, a billionaire doctor with everything money could buy, because she chose to love a crippled orphan with nothing. But what happened next would shock the world forever. The chandeliers shimmered like captured starlight inside the grand ballroom of the Lagos Hilton, casting their golden glow across gowns and tuxedos worth fortunes. Cameramen jostled for position, bulbs flashing in relentless bursts as the city's wealthiest and most powerful streamed in, each eager to be seen, photographed, and celebrated. And then she arrived. Dr. Amanda Williams stepped gracefully out of her sleek black Rolls-Royce, the diamond pins in her hair catching the light with every subtle movement. The reporters swarmed instantly, microphones extended, camera shutters rapid-firing. She was not only one of Africa's youngest billionaire doctors but also a woman who had built her reputation on brilliance, precision, and sheer determination. In her late 30s but radiant as ever, she was proof that success could wear the face of elegance. "Dr. Amanda, over here. One photo please," a journalist cried out. Amanda offered them a poised smile, her crimson lips curving slightly as she paused just long enough for the perfect shot. Her bodyguards formed a discreet wall around her as she ascended the carpeted stairs, her sequined silver gown trailing like liquid light. The host of the gala announced her arrival with flair. "Ladies and gentlemen, the philanthropist whose foundation has transformed healthcare access across Nigeria and beyond, Dr. Amanda Williams." Polite applause rose from the hall as heads turned, some in admiration, others in envy. Amanda moved through the crowd, her eyes sharp, her posture straight, her aura one of untouchable success. Investors approached her with glasses of champagne in hand, trying to catch her attention with business proposals or flirtations masked as compliments. She acknowledged them with polite nods, but her mind was elsewhere. To the public, Amanda's life looked perfect. Wealth, intelligence, and influence wrapped in one. Yet as the evening wore on, her smiles became thinner, her laughter less convincing. Every handshake, every congratulatory remark about her perfect life, echoed like a reminder of a cage she had unknowingly built for herself. During the charity auction segment, Amanda stood at the podium, announcing new funding for a rural clinic her foundation had recently partnered with. The crowd cheered, the rich pledged donations, and her reputation as the savior doctor grew even stronger. Cameras caught her every gesture, every polished phrase. But when the applause finally died down and she stepped off the stage, Amanda found herself glancing out through the tall glass windows of the ballroom. Beyond the glitter of the gala, she saw the city sprawled in darkness, its streets buzzing with ordinary lives untouched by wealth and glamour. Somewhere out there, far from the velvet carpets and champagne flutes, people struggled in ways she could hardly imagine. She inhaled slowly, her diamond earrings glinting under the light as if mocking her thoughts. To the world she had it all. But something was missing, something real, something unpolished, something no amount of billions could buy. And as fate would have it, in that unseen world beyond the gala's glass walls, her story was already waiting. A story that would begin with a crippled orphan named David. The bustling open-air market roared with life. Hawkers shouted prices, the smell of roasted corn and fried plantain filled the air, and impatient Okada riders honked as they swerved through the chaos. Amid the noise and color sat a young man in a worn-out wheelchair, his eyes alert, his posture upright despite the weakness in his legs. His name was David. His clothes were plain, faded jeans and a second-hand t-shirt, but his spirit carried a quiet dignity. Around him, a small cluster of children clung to his side, younger orphans who saw him not just as a friend but as their protector. "Uncle David, they're coming again," whispered one of the boys nervously. David turned just in time to see two older street thugs approaching, their faces smug with cruelty. They had been harassing the children for days, demanding food or coins the orphans didn't have. "Look at the cripple," one of the bullies sneered. "Still pretending to be a hero?" The children shrank back, but David's voice rang steady, "Leave them alone. If you want to fight someone, fight me." Laughter erupted from the bullies. "Fight you? You can't even stand." One of them shoved his wheelchair roughly, almost tipping it over. The children cried out, but David steadied himself, gripping the wheels tightly, his eyes fierce. Even without strength in his legs, his courage made him larger than life in that moment. "You think being weak means I'll bow to you?" he said firmly. "You're cowards, nothing more." The insult stung. One of the bullies raised his hand to strike, but before the blow could land, a market woman shouted for help and the crowd stirred. Embarrassed, the thugs retreated with threats, but not before casting David a hateful glare. The children rushed to him, clinging to his arms. David ruffled one boy's hair and forced a smile. "Don't cry. As long as I'm here, no one will hurt you." The kids laughed shakily, their fear melting into trust. They believed him, not because he was strong in body but because his heart was fearless. As the evening sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, David wheeled himself back toward the crumbling orphanage building where he and the children lived. The roof leaked, the walls cracked, but to them it was home. He parked his chair at the entrance, watching the children play, his gaze softening. Life had taken his parents, his mobility, and any chance at comfort. But it hadn't taken his spirit. He had nothing, not wealth, not status, not even a family name. Yet he had chosen to give what little he could. His courage, his laughter, and his love for those who had even less. Far away, Amanda's world glittered with diamonds. Here, David's world flickered with resilience. Neither knew it yet, but their worlds were about to collide, and nothing would ever be the same again. The rural community clinic was a modest one-story building painted in faded white, its walls cracked from years of rain and heat. Outside, the air smelled of dust and kerosene. Patients crowded the waiting area, women fanning themselves with wrappers, children coughing softly, and tired men waiting for treatment after long days in the fields. Dr. Amanda Williams stepped out of her black SUV, the driver hurrying to open her door. She wore a simple cream blouse and dark trousers, far removed from the glamour of the gala. Her face carried its usual calm authority, but her eyes betrayed curiosity. This was one of the many clinics her foundation supported, and today she had come for a surprise inspection. As she entered, the staff greeted her respectfully. Nurses whispered her name, patients turned their heads in recognition, but Amanda moved with quiet grace, offering nods instead of smiles. She had been here before, but something about today felt different. On her way out of the clinic, she paused at the sound of raised voices nearby. From across the dusty courtyard, she saw a commotion, a group of older boys mocking and shoving someone. It was David. He was trying to wheel himself forward, but the boys had blocked his path, one kicking the rim of his chair, another laughing cruelly. A few frightened younger children stood behind him, clutching his shoulders for protection. "Leave them," David said firmly, his voice low but commanding. One boy smirked. "And if we don't? What will you do? Roll over us?" The boys laughed loudly. Amanda froze, watching. She expected David to look helpless, but instead she saw something unexpected, steel in his eyes, a defiance that seemed to silence the mockery even before he spoke again. "I may not walk," David said, gripping the wheels of his chair tightly, "but at least I don't spend my strength on hurting children." The words struck harder than a slap. For a moment the bullies faltered. Then one leaned forward and hissed, "You talk too much, cripple." He shoved the chair, but David pushed back with surprising force, refusing to tip. Amanda stepped forward sharply. "Enough." Her voice carried authority that cut through the noise. The bullies turned and froze when they recognized her. Even here, her reputation preceded her. They mumbled excuses and scattered. The courtyard grew quiet again. The younger children clung to David's arms, whispering in relief. Amanda approached slowly. "Are you all right?" she asked, her tone softer now. David looked up at her, his eyes calm, steady. "We're fine," he said. "They're just boys with nothing better to do." Amanda studied him for a moment. He had no wealth, no power, no social standing, yet he carried himself with more dignity than many of the men she had met in her world. "Thank you for helping them," she said gently. He shook his head. "I didn't do it for thanks." That simple reply lingered in her mind long after she left the clinic. She couldn't explain it yet, but something about the man in the wheelchair stirred her in ways she hadn't felt in years. Amanda had not planned on returning to the rural clinic so soon, yet 2 days later she found herself back in the dusty courtyard. Her staff assumed she was there to review the clinic's records. In truth, she was searching for him, the man in the wheelchair with the steady gaze. She spotted him under the shade of a neem tree, surrounded by children. One sat on his lap, laughing as David guided her tiny hands across the pages of a torn textbook. Others crowded around, listening intently. He was teaching them arithmetic, his voice patient, his face animated. Amanda lingered in the doorway watching. Something about the way he spoke, how he smiled despite his circumstances, unsettled her. When he noticed her, he paused and gave a small nod. "Doctor," he said politely. She approached, hands folded. "You teach them?" "They teach me too," David replied. "They remind me there's still joy in this world." Amanda crouched beside the children. "What are you learning?" "Multiplication," one shouted proudly. Amanda chuckled. She stayed longer than she intended, listening as David guided the lesson. There was no arrogance in his voice, No bitterness in his words, only warmth. By the time she left, Amanda realized something had shifted. The billionaire doctor who had everything was now intrigued by a man with nothing. The next week, Amanda stood beneath glittering chandeliers once again, attending a medical conference in Abuja. Her peers surrounded her, wealthy men in tailored suits, their conversation dominated by investments, luxury cars, and upcoming elections. "Dr. Amanda, you should meet my son," one elderly businessman said with a sly smile. "Fresh from Oxford. A perfect match." Amanda smiled politely, but her mind wandered back to the dusty courtyard, to the laughter of children around a man in a worn-out wheelchair. The memory lingered longer than the champagne in her glass. Meanwhile, David sat in the orphanage dining hall with the children. Dinner was yam porridge, barely enough to go around. He gave most of his portion to a younger boy and ignored his own hunger. Later, he gathered the children around a lantern and told them stories of courage, of kings who ruled with kindness. 2 worlds apart, Amanda basked in endless praise, David in endless struggle. Yet their thoughts were slowly beginning to intertwine. Amanda arranged to visit the orphanage under the guise of assessing its needs. She walked through cracked walls, leaking roofs, and broken beds. The children followed her curiously, whispering in excitement. David wheeled himself beside her. "We make do with what we have," he said, his tone calm. "Do you ever wish things were different?" Amanda asked. He paused, then nodded. "Sometimes. But if I spend every day wishing, I'll miss what's in front of me. These children need me present, not dreaming of what I can't have." Amanda studied him carefully. He wasn't bitter, he was grounded. And that groundedness stirred something deep within her. They sat under the tree again. David told her of his parents' death in the car accident, of the day he woke to find his legs lifeless. "I wanted to give up," he admitted softly. "But then I saw the children had no one. I decided, maybe that's why I survived. To be here for them." Amanda felt her throat tighten. For the first time in years, she was moved not by a medical breakthrough, not by wealth, but by a man's courage. Weeks passed. Amanda began sending supplies quietly, medicine, textbooks, food. The children adored her visits, but David grew uneasy. One evening he confronted her. "Why are you doing this?" She tilted her head. "Because it's needed." He frowned. "No, because of me. But I don't want to be your project. I don't need pity." Her voice softened. "It isn't pity. It's respect. You're doing more with nothing than most do with everything." Their eyes locked, silence stretching between them. The children's laughter echoed nearby, but for Amanda and David, the world seemed to pause. Something unspoken was growing, fragile yet undeniable. Amanda invited David to a hospital charity dinner, believing it would show others the value of his spirit. He hesitated but eventually agreed. That night he arrived in a modest suit, his wheelchair polished as best he could. Amanda welcomed him warmly, guiding him into the grand hall. But the whispers began almost immediately. "Is that him? The cripple? A billionaire with a beggar? What a disgrace. She must have lost her mind." The laughter was cruel, cutting through the music. David tried to endure it, but the humiliation stung. He excused himself early, rolling out into the cold night. Amanda followed, catching him near the parking lot. "Don't listen to them," she said urgently. But David shook his head, his voice trembling. "You don't belong with me. Look at them, Amanda. They're right, I'll only drag you down." Before she could reply, he wheeled away, leaving her heart aching. Amanda invited David to a hospital charity dinner, believing it would show others the value of his spirit. He hesitated but eventually agreed. That night he arrived in a modest suit, his wheelchair polished as best he could. Amanda welcomed him warmly, guiding him into the grand hall. But the whispers began almost immediately. "Is that him? The cripple? A billionaire with a beggar? What a disgrace. She must have lost her mind." The laughter was cruel, cutting through the music. David tried to endure it, but the humiliation stung. He excused himself early, rolling out into the cold night. Amanda followed, catching him near the parking lot. "Don't listen to them," she said urgently. But David shook his head, his voice trembling. "You don't belong with me. Look at them, Amanda. They're right, I'll only drag you down." Before she could reply, he wheeled away, leaving her heart aching. Days turned into weeks. David avoided her calls, her visits. He focused on the children, burying himself in teaching, repairing, surviving. Amanda, meanwhile, threw herself into work, yet found no joy in it. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her penthouse, replaying his words, "I'll only drag you down." Their worlds, which had begun to blend, were once again apart, but neither could silence the pull they felt. One evening, Amanda drove to the orphanage unannounced. She found David sitting outside alone, his wheelchair parked beneath the stars. "Why are you here?" he asked quietly. "Because I can't stay away," she admitted. "I don't care what they say. I don't care about status or wealth. What I see in you, your strength, your kindness, that's worth more than all of it." David's eyes glistened. He tried to speak, but emotion caught in his throat. Finally he whispered, "I've loved you too, from the moment you looked at me without pity." Tears welled in Amanda's eyes as she took his hands. In that quiet night, with only the rustle of trees around them, their love was finally spoken into existence. Their relationship did not remain hidden for long. Paparazzi caught Amanda holding David's hand at the orphanage. Within hours, tabloids screamed, "Billionaire doctor in love with cripple orphan." Social media exploded. Some called it inspiring, others cruelly mocked them. At the hospital board, investors whispered, "This relationship will ruin her image. Who will take her seriously now?" Amanda ignored the stares, but the storm was only beginning. Amanda was summoned to a board meeting. Wealthy investors, mostly men, glared across the polished table. "You must end this arrangement," one said coldly, "or resign from your position." Amanda's jaw tightened. "My work saves lives. If you value appearances more than that, then perhaps I don't belong here." Meanwhile, David considered disappearing. He told himself it would protect her from the backlash. The thought tore at him, but he began writing a farewell letter. David packed a small bag. He wheeled himself toward the orphanage gate at dawn, the farewell letter tucked in his pocket. But Amanda arrived just then, breathless. "Where are you going?" "I can't let you lose everything for me," he said, voice breaking. She stepped closer, tears streaming. "You're not costing me anything. You're giving me something I never had, love that's real." David's resolve shattered. They embraced tightly, both trembling, unwilling to let the other go. Amanda refused to give up. She reached out to specialists worldwide. With her resources, she arranged advanced surgery and intensive therapy for David. The road was grueling, operations, endless physiotherapy, moments of despair. But David persevered, Amanda always at his side. Months later, with crutches under his arms, David took his first shaky steps. The orphanage children cheered, their voices filling the air with hope. The world, once mocking, now gasped in awe. A year later, the orphanage had transformed, new classrooms, repaired roofs, and smiling children with books in hand. David stood at the chalkboard, leaning on his crutch, teaching with the same passion as before. Amanda watched from the doorway, pride and love shining in her eyes. Reporters came again, but this time the headlines read differently. From orphan to inspiration, the love story that defied the odds. Amanda and David walked through the courtyard hand in hand. Society had laughed, mocked, even tried to tear them apart. Yet here they stood, proof that love was stronger than wealth, stronger than mockery, stronger than fear. Their story had shocked the world, but in the end it had also inspired it.